Hi, welcome to the first video in the lecture on the ontology of magic. Um, let's start off with a question. Have you ever noticed that so many people have this idea of what magic really is? And they have something to say. They have the absolute truth. This is what real magic is really about. And, usually you're interested about that. Sometimes they're very prolific people who have written a book about it. And, you're reading that book and they're telling you what real magic is really about, what makes it happen, what is absolutely true about how magic is here in the world. And then you start reading that magical book, and it's very interesting philosophy. And you end up seeing that, their definition is not really a definition. It's actually more of a technique. And the more they define it, the more you see, okay, you're not defining magic as magic is. You're actually defining magic as you do it, or magic as the author does it. And so you go on to read another book, and the same thing happens, and another, and you end up having all of these weird and wonderful magic theories, and they're in appearance contradictory. They are completely of a different nature, of a different subject, and you're like, all of these magical models are valid. All of these definitions work. All of these magical techniques can be done. However, you end up and none of them actually tell you what magic is beyond the scope of that very technique. This is a little bit what I want to explore when it comes to when it comes to this lecture. I'm not going to explore everything exhaustively. I'm going to have a few videos on particular subjects. There's this, of course, introductory video. I'm going to make a concluding video, but I do want to make one video on scientific epistemology, one video on categorization of magic, and a video on existentialism. Which which basically represent a little bit of the worldviews that were encountered with today, and and not necessarily how to go around them, but how those worldviews can influence magic, or how those different ontological perspectives influence how we go about doing magic, and what kind of ontological perspectives could be useful to us practitioners, magicians, occultists. I like to add how I came upon this idea of making this particular video. I was reading, I think it was must have been 2 years ago. I was reading this book right here. It's Defining Magic, a primer. It's basically a nice little book. It's good for people who are in the religious sciences doing their BA, and they want to have a little bit more anthropological data, that kind of stuff. It's basically, I think it's really meant to be like a 15-hour course given in a university or a college or something like that. It's actually very good. It's not exhaustive, but it's a good summary. The book is a good progression. But if I am to come back on topic, I would like to take just a few seconds to read the book review I wrote on that, and it'll give you a little bit of an idea where I'm coming from and why I chose to do this video in the first place. So I just finished reading this book, Defining Magic, a Reader. I have to say, inasmuch as it is an excellent anthology of the evolution of the debate within the social sciences, this book is completely useless to the occult practitioner. At the end, this book simply makes an unconscious statement of the old linguistic paradox. The more you attempt to explain or define something, the further away language will take you away from the phenomenon or from the truth of the phenomenon that you are trying to explain. You can write volumes of explanation and definitions, and at the end of the day, all you're left with is the dictionary. Even with the dictionary's indefinite permutations, all you end up with is a self-referential cycle. And some do to argue that that's not what they're doing. It's almost as if scholarship's fate is a post-structuralist mash of anti-epistemological serious speak of precising or incising something away from the thing that it's studying. If you get social scientists to make the perfect definition of a table, and when they end up with a definition, you can just as easily find an artist to make a table outside of their spectacular definition, and everybody will still agree that it's a table. But this book tries to define magic. Its point is, it makes its point clearly and is really good for an undergrad or the curious, historically curious magician. But I think as a solution to this book's problem, I'll refer to Terence McKenna's oft-mentioned meaninglessness of words in the face of the felt presence of immediate experience. Magic, like falling in love, can't be defined, but it is so fundamental to our human experience that it will be recognized when it is lived. And this is a little bit where I'm going to go with all of this. I do believe that magic is a very human thing. It's something that is as fundamental to the human being as freedom, as love, all of these things. Philosophy has tried to define over and over again, but at the end of the day, it's just the fact of being human, experiencing it, doing it, feeling it, that you know you're in love, that you know you're in a situation or a state of freedom. I mean state as in stasis, not a state as in a government entity. When you know that you're in a state of freedom, or that you know that you're conscious. And so I'll get a little bit to that, but to give a bit on my background on why I want to expose a little bit of that, I would say, associating the ontology of magic with the ontology of our humanness. Well, basically, I have a BA in psychology myself. I used to work, I worked for 10 years as a counselor. So studied in that, worked in that a lot. The experience of being alive and of being here and now, and the suffering that one may go through is something that interested me a lot, and also the whole developmental perspective that I really worked on a lot. I'm not going to go so much in the developmental perspective, because if I start trying to talk about the initiatic process, how does magic evolve within an individual, I'm going to be moving away from its ontology, and I'm going to be going more and more into technique or into process, and not really where I want to get at. And as another point that I'd like to mention in this introduction, have you ever noticed how everybody's magical definition is stuck to the cosmology that you have? Chaos magic has been saying it for decades, how belief is such an absolutely important factor in magic. I'm not the type who says that belief is the mechanism, or is that it's the activating factor of magic, but I would say that belief is a contextualization. It provides the context in which the magic will manifest in the magician's worldview, or in the magician's experience of being in the world, basically. But I do have a few examples about that the whole magic is stuck to cosmology. If you look at, I think it's in the Greek magical papyri or papyri. I don't know how you pronounce that in English. The Greek magical papyri has a bit about the Ephesian letters. I think they go ascion, katascion, lux, tetrax, damna, maneus, aisha. There was a very interesting uh, debate about what they meant back in ancient Greece. I forget which. Should have brought that reference here. But it was basically ascion darkness, katascion not darkness, lux I think was the light, tetrax as in four would be the geography, and damna manias aisha. I think it had to do with the well, a little bit more of the development of existence. I guess I should have prepared that. Anyways, can't go back in time. This is live. Maybe in the next video, or maybe I think I'll just put a link down there. So sorry about that. I guess outside of my voice, you'll have to read a little bit of that. There is, of course, the abracadabra, which basically means I create as I speak. Amen, or so mote it be, or as I said it, so it will happen. These are the definitions. Those are usually linked with the cosmologies of magic as or the universe being made out of language, which would be the 22 letters and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go too far into that in the introduction. And of course, people who have a materialist worldview, of course, will always come up with similar, a corresponding magical technique. And this whole worldview is usually a comment on ontology or an ontological stance. And one thing I do want to make clear in one of the future videos is how many of those ontological stances can boil down to the same thing. Oswald Wirth had a very interesting comment on how it was basically the Platonic versus the Aristotelian. Something I'll elaborate a little bit more. And oh yes, that was on my notes. This whole thelemic definition, which is very, very popular. Magic is the art and science of causing change in conformity with will. This is a very cool definition because on the outside it looks very, very neutral and it looks independent and separate. However, when you delve into Crowley's worldview, and I may be a center of pestilence for talking about this, but when you speak of Crowley's worldview, his whole magic, the whole point for him of magic is to attain to your true will. So causing change, well, it's basically changing yourself to conform to your true will, which is something that is supposed to be paradoxically complete freedom and complete restriction to your true will. But anyways, the point is that even that little definition, which appears universal, is very, very stuck to Crowley's worldview. So at the end, I guess this is it for the introduction. If you have any comments, suggestions, criticism, complaints, I am open to any and all of it. I'll be very happy. You can send me a message. You can comment on the video below. You can even give me a proper video rebuttal if that's something that you'd like to do. But yeah, I'll be very happy to answer those if I can. But in the meantime, yep, see you tomorrow for the next video. Goodbye.